All right, we'll stay with this and speak to international news editor Sophie Mokoena. Sophie, good afternoon to you, and certainly a lot of eyes on Mozambique. Venancio Mondlane arriving back. What now?
Well, we don't know what's going to happen on arrival. He did a mock inauguration, declaring himself the president of Mozambique, as he indicated before leaving Europe, that this is what he was going to do before the inauguration of the president-elect, Daniel Chapo, who was a candidate for Frelimo. But we don't know what's going to happen. As you heard in that insert, President Filipe Nyusi did invite the opposition parties, including Frelimo, the two main ones, that is Podemos and also Renamo, and of course Frelimo, to engage in talks. We don't know what's the outcome of that meeting, but my observation, having spoken to Renamo and Podemos officials or people, I get a sense that there's an attempt to isolate this candidate. Remember, he is not the leader of a political party, but he was parachuted to be a candidate of Podemos. And I think there's some restlessness, particularly after he left the country. There was a bit of a vacuum, much as people were protesting on the ground, supporting him. But you know, these protests, you must guide them, you must be there, you must be at the forefront. I think that's what actually propelled him to come back, thinking that ahead of the inauguration, his presence must be felt by Mozambican government. And I think that's what he has done. But the reality is there was that meeting, but we'll get details later today when we speak to stakeholders.
And I suppose the big question as well is that some people are asking the inauguration set for next week, does it go ahead?
Well, the inauguration will go ahead. According to government, you would recall that when President Ramaphosa requested the envoy, Dr. Sidney Mufamadi, to go to Mozambique to engage with the Mozambican government, he met the outgoing president, Filipe Nyusi, and he indicated that everything is under control. They'll be able to manage the situation. And right now, preparations are continuing in terms of the inauguration, but we don't know. You still have how many? Almost 7-8 days to that important day, and therefore anything is possible. But as we have been told earlier today, the inauguration will continue. You can see the strategy that was applied by the Mozambican government was that we're not going to arrest him as people were expecting that he will be arrested. We don't know, maybe later today. They allowed him. There were lots of people in the streets in Maputo and also at the airport when he arrived, lots of people there, and of course addressing his supporters in big numbers. But somewhere, somehow, you also had those sporadic violence and back and forth between the security forces and his supporters. But we don't know what's going to happen.
And there's another story, that has brought some uncertainty as well, and that's developments in Namibia and the pending legal action by opposition parties. Let's talk about that. Well,
we know that the opposition, IPC, took the matter to the courts. They started with the electoral court complaining about the electoral process, and the electoral court came back and said all political parties must come and inspect the electoral material and very sensitive material. They did that, and then they took the matter to court, saying that they want the ballots, particularly those ballots cast after the voting day where there was an extension. They are saying that process was flawed. Other people are saying it wasn't, because the president of the country, who has got power to declare elections, was able to promulgate or perhaps to announce and gazette the extension. and therefore it was proper. So you have the other party, Landless Movement, supporting now this court challenge at the Supreme Court. And today the matter was before Supreme Court, but I can tell you some judges were not happy about the presentations. So we don't know now. They will go through those documents. They've also asked stakeholders such as the Electoral Commission and others to respond, you know, and as people who have been included in these documents. And therefore, on the 27th of January, we will hear what the Supreme Court of that country is going to say. But I can tell you, when you look at the history of Namibia, most of the recent elections, they ended up in court, the parties contesting the electoral process and the results, and nothing changed when you look at the previous elections. But we don't know this time around. Maybe there's sufficient evidence. Remember, it's all about evidence, and also depending on what the constitution of that country is saying, but particularly the Electoral Act in that country on issues of extension of voting.
And certainly it's a story that will continue to bring you more of here on the channel, because it really, as Sophie says, just brings some uncertainty. But Sophie, there's another story in the US. That's former US President Jimmy Carter being laid to rest. It's the first time ahead of the inauguration of Donald Trump that we will see the former presidents of the US and they, you know, in one room ahead of this, and their body language will be quite telling.
Yes, indeed. We saw them arriving. They are already there. When you look at the visuals, you can see that they came and they supported President Carter, as you can see that currently someone is on the podium, because you know that there was a strong bond between President Bush, President Clinton, President Obama, President Carter. These are the former presidents of United States of America, and they agreed on many issues, including their opposition to Donald Trump. But today, this comes ahead of the important day where the country will see the inauguration of President Donald Trump on the 19th of January. And this is quite important to also observe. And I think for the family of Carter, this is something that they are happy about, that someone like Joe Biden will preside over this funeral.
And live visuals there will continue to dip in and out as we listen to different messages of support for the family. And we understand he'll be buried in his hometown of Georgia. Sophie, thank you so much, though, for your time. And certainly big stories internationally. Even just here, our neighbors, there are a number of stories that are making headlines. You heard there's, you know, Mozambique, there's Namibia. There's quite a number of significant developments that will continue to keep you abreast of here on SABC News. That was international news editor Sophie Mokoena.